Today I want to talk about 4 of our favorite rotator cuff exercises for overhead athletes. And if you're an overhead athlete or a coach or a trainer, you've probably seen these movements done thousands of times. But I just want to spend a few minutes and make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck and kind of pay attention to some of the small details within the actual movement. So before we look at these 4 exercises, let's go over just a real quick basic anatomy lesson. Real quick, I promise. So the rotator cuff is made up of 4 different muscles. One of those muscles does internal rotation. It brings the hand downward or when you finish throwing. The other 3 muscles do what we call external rotation. So whenever you're in layback or about to throw, whenever the humerus is going backwards, that's what external rotation does. So again, 1 muscle internally rotates, 3 muscles externally rotate of the rotator cuff muscles. So the movements we're going to talk about today all work on external rotation. And prior to the name of the movements, yes, it externally rotates in the humerus. The main point of these external rotators are to keep the humerus depressed and within the socket whenever whenever you're throwing, whenever you're at ball release. So a good healthy shoulder, the humerus stays within the socket, it's not moving and gliding around, right? So that's why we're trying to build rotator cuff strength if you're an overhead athlete. So that's all the anatomy lessons I'll give for the rotator cuff. Now let's actually look at some of these exercises and some of these movements. So again, there's just 4 here, and we prescribe more than 4 throughout the program, throughout the year, but these are our basic go-tos, and then there are progressions from these go-tos. So before we look at these actual exercises and movements, I just want to encourage y'all, encourage y'all to consider subscribing to the channel if you like any sports performance content. Let's get into the actual exercises. So this exercise is something we call prone external rotation. So prone meaning face down, then external rotation referring to the shoulder joint right here. And so this is going to be a neuromuscular activation exercise. I'll go ahead and start from the beginning. And this is something that we want to get our rotator cuff firing before we do an actual strength work. So a lot of times we'll see people cranking their low back, but we just want the humerus, the bone right here, to rotate laterally, right, or to move the arm back in this, what we call the glenoid fossa, and that makes the ball and socket joint. So again, we are trying to get the rotator cuff firing. That's why we want to create that neuromuscular activation. We come to the top, we hold for 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we usually do reps of 6 here, so we have 30 seconds of time under tension. So we know whenever we're doing an actual strength exercise that we are actually working on the lateral rotators that we want to target there. So again, it's called a prone external rotation. Again, you'll see elbows get below the shoulder here, so make sure the elbow is even with the shoulder so the lat's not firing, and that you have some type of pad under your arm as well. So as we progress from that prone external rotation, we'll do a sideline external rotation. Again, like mentioned early in the video, a lot of these movements are kind of basic, but I think having this attention to the detail and being obsessed with the correct way to do things can really go a long way. So we'll see we're going to put pressure into the blue pad here. The elbow is going to be even with the shoulder, not in front, not behind, and don't let the shoulder immediately rotate forward, right? And ideally, you would have weights in your hand, 1, 3, 5 pounds potentially. But this is kind of our basic next step as far as our rotator cuff exercises go. So again, I'm laying down. Oh, let's restart again. So I'm laying down on the table, have weights in my hand, usually like a 10 to 12 rep range, what we're after, with a 3-second tempo on the way down. You just want to feel it in the back of your shoulder where your lateral rotators are. You want to avoid any pinching the front part of your shoulder. Again, not letting the humerus glide forward or the shoulder joint itself roll forward. So again, we'll go about 3 sets of 12 here. Feel it in the back of your shoulder, our rotator cuff, holding a small weight here while putting pressure into the black pad here. So we'll have one more exercise that we'll go over as far as the rotator cuff exercise. But just to review, we had a prone external rotation. This was a side lying external rotation. And now we're going to have an elbow by side external rotation with a band. So here's what we call an elbow by side external rotation exercise. And you can use a band, a cable, whatever you have access to. So basic exercise, right? Something that any overhead athlete has done probably thousands of times. But let's break into a little bit more detail. I know I cut off his head up here, but that's okay. You're really not missing all that much up top. So let's go ahead and look at the shoulder and elbow. Want to make sure that the elbow is lined up in the same vertical path as the top of the humerus here, top of the shoulder. We don't want the elbow to be too far in front or too far behind here. It's going to limit the external rotation and can put some unwanted stress in the anterior part of the shoulder capsule, of the joint capsule there. So again, you can use band, you can use a cable. When you come out here, few keys here, make sure that you're not extending the elbow, keep it flexed, keep pressure against this pad here. You really should only feel pressure, or not pressure, but only feel a stress a good stress behind the shoulder and those lateral rotators, the same areas we just talked about the previous 2 videos. And when you come back in, you want to make sure that the band or whatever you're using for resistance does not pull your shoulder inward or does not immediately rotate the shoulder here. So again, we'll stick to about 10 to 12 reps here. We'll get a slight squeeze at the very end. If you want to make it tougher, make the tempo slower as you go in. Give me a 3-second tempo when you come back in, so a little slower than that. But again, pressure into the pad. Don't rotate the shoulder inward, and make sure that you're just feeling it strictly behind the shoulder on the external rotator. So again, it's an elbow by side external rotation. Use a band, use a cable, whatever you have access to. Just make sure that you're limiting any tension through here. You want to feel it behind the shoulder here. So here's the last one we'll talk about. This is an elbow elevated external rotation. So again, similar to the last one, a basic exercise, but we want to make sure we're doing it correctly here. So let's watch a few more reps here, then we'll kind of rewind it and go from there. So you notice how Greg here slightly turns. So we want to get the scap in the scapula plane. The scap is rotated forward by about 30 degrees. So we want to be rotating the humerus in that scapular plane. So we're going to have a slight angle here. We're going to keep the elbow right even or slightly above the shoulder. So we'll have his hand right here to make sure that happens. We want to see how he kind of raises it a little bit. Yeah, right there. It's a good rep. We want to avoid the lat cranking into it. When the lat takes over, that's when we have that anterior humeral glide, where the front part of the humerus bone will glide forward against the shoulder joint. So again, we never want to feel anything in the front part of the shoulder. We want to strictly be working from these lateral rotators, feeling it here. So again, similar to the last exercise, you can use a band. You can use a cable, whatever you have available to you. You just want to make sure that you are feeling it through this region here. So usually about 10 to 12 reps. And to make it tougher, you can give us a 3-second tempo on the way down. So it's going to be a 3, 2, 1 count, and then you come back up with it. So again, elbow stays right even or slightly above the shoulder. Want to make sure you're not feeling any pain in the front part of the shoulder, and make sure you're in the scapula plane too with a slight turn, just so you're getting the most out of this exercise. Again, elbow elevated external rotation here. So again, just 4 movements, but I would encourage you to pay close attention to how you're doing those movements so you make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck and you're actually building strength within the rotator cuff. So when you're at ball release or when you're taking on a block or whatever it may be, the humerus is staying within the socket and not moving and gliding around. That's when kind of pain, discomfort, inflammation, and impingement actually tends to happen. So if you can build a strong rotator cuff, if you can build strong lateral rotators, the humerus is more likely to stay within the ball and socket joint when you're moving around. But I want to hear from you. What do you think about these exercises? Try them out. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions, how they feel. Let us know. We'll see you next time on the next sports performance video.